This presentation is to inform you on the IHI reporting requirements. The content of this webinar will be on the general reporting requirements, then on the periodic reporting. We will follow with some practical examples of reporting for the entities and close with the IHI project outputs. As this webinar is relevant to all participants of the project, please find here some general definitions. Beneficiaries are entities who sign the grant agreement. Affiliated entities are entities that have a financial/legal link with the beneficiary. Associated partners are entities who do not sign the grant agreement and who do not receive EU funding but implement action tasks. IHI private members are members and their affiliates to industry associations, FPA, including Vaccines Europe, COSIR, MedTech Europe, and Europa Bio. IHI contributing partners are entities contributing to IHI projects and whose application has been approved by the IHI Governing Board. Hybrid participants are private members or contributing partners who are contributing in kind and also request EU funding. Chapter 1. General reporting requirements. At the end of each reporting period, project consortia have to prepare the periodic report that has both a technical part and a financial part, but also update the continuous reporting, which feeds into Part A of the technical part. At the end of the project, besides the above parts, beneficiaries will also have to provide a certification of costs. More on that later. When is the periodic reporting due? The project is divided in periods of 12 or 18 months. The periodic reports must be submitted within 60 days after the end of each period of the concerned project. This requires coordination and planning. Below an example. For a project with 3 periods, for example, with a period of 12 months starting in October and finishing a year later in September, the first periodic report will be due 60 days later, thus on the 30th of November. Similarly for period 2 and period 3. This slide illustrates an overview of the timeline for reporting. As you will see, the project starts, the continuous reporting starts at the same time and remains open throughout the project lifetime, and then at the end of each period, the periodic reporting is due 60 days later. How to prepare the reporting? The reporting is prepared by all beneficiaries through the Funding and Tenders portal. There is the continuous reporting module and the periodic reporting module. Each beneficiary will receive a notification at the end of each project period to contribute to the technical part B of the periodic report, to ensure that the continuous reporting is up to date, which feeds into part A of the technical report, and to complete the financial part, e-sign and submit to the coordinator. The coordinator will then review all the elements, approve and submit the periodic report as a whole to IHI within 60 days after the end of each project period. Step-by-step explanations to complete the periodic reporting and continuous reporting are available via hyperlinks.
Chapter 2: Periodic Reporting. The periodic reporting is composed of a financial part and a technical part. Let's tackle first the financial part. At the end of each reporting period, all beneficiaries will receive a notification to complete their own financial statement and the one for their affiliates, if any, for the concerned period. Starting from period 2, it will also be possible to submit financial statement adjustments to previous periods in case it is necessary to make corrections. In final period, in addition to financial statements, beneficiaries will also need to upload a certificate provided by a qualified external auditor if applicable. There are two types of certificates, the CFS and the CCS, and one or the other needs to be uploaded at the end of the period, if applicable, depending on the threshold. You can have more information on those certificates on slide 30. It is the same model of financial statement for all beneficiaries and affiliated entities, so also for the entities that are IHI private members and contributing partners. In your financial statement, you will need to declare all eligible costs that have been incurred during the reporting period to implement the project. This means that all costs must fulfill the general cost eligibility conditions, and all costs must fulfill the specific conditions for each budget category. In your financial statement, you will also need to specify the requested EU contribution, if any. This amount can be either positive or equal to zero, depending on the cases. In the financial statement, there are different cost categories: personnel costs, subcontracting costs, purchase costs, other cost categories, indirect costs, and there is also a section to specify the requested EU contribution. This is how a financial statement looks like in the tool. As you can see, some costs have an editable field, some others have a link to click, and others have a clickable icon on the right to complete the use of resources. On the financial statement, all the cost categories are displayed, and as you can see, for the indirect cost, it is calculated automatically for all beneficiaries and affiliated entities as 25% of the direct costs. For the personnel cost, you will need to declare either the actual cost or the unit cost. By clicking on the icon on the right, it will open the use of resource form in which you will need to specify the number of person months broken down per work package. Please try to provide the closest estimate. Underneath, you can also declare the use of in-kind contribution from third parties, for instance, if you have seconded personnel. On this slide, you can find the different options to report your personnel costs. So option 1 is to declare your personnel cost as actual costs. In such a case, you must follow the standard formula from Horizon Europe Model Grant Agreement. And the formula is the following. So to calculate personnel cost for one person and one reporting period, you need to multiply the days equivalent with the daily rate. You find a lot of practical examples in the annotated grant agreement. So for instance, if you have an employee working part-time or in parental leave. The second option is to declare your personnel cost as unit cost. This is only possible if average personnel cost is in line with your entity's usual cost accounting practices. And in such a case, it's important to make sure that in the calculation of the daily rate, you exclude any indirect cost to avoid double counting, because as I said, indirect costs are already automatically calculated as 25% of the direct costs. Another option to declare personnel cost as unit cost is in case you are an SME owner without a salary. What is really important as well for personnel cost is to keep the records of the days that have been worked on the project. So for doing so, you must either sign monthly a declaration for which you have the template on the hyperlink, or another solution is to use another reliable time recording system if you have one in place. Here we have a concrete example on how to calculate actual personnel costs for a period of 12 months and an employee working full-time. On this slide, you have a concrete example on how to calculate actual personnel costs for a reporting period of 12 months and an employee working part-time. Here is another example for a reporting period of 18 months and an employee working full-time. In this example, it is for a reporting period of 18 months and an employee working half-time. And on this slide, you have one last example on how to calculate your actual personal costs for a period of 18 months, a person working full-time, but who has worked only 6 months out of the 18 months of the period. You still can find much more other examples in the annotated grant agreement, as I mentioned earlier. Subcontracting costs. So as a reminder, subcontractors must be selected following the entity's usual practice, ensuring best value for money or lowest price if it's appropriate, and ensuring as well that there is no conflict of interest. By clicking on the icon on the right, it will open up the use of resource form in which you will be able to include the actual cost that has been paid to the subcontractor, provide a short description of the subcontracted task, and specify if the subcontracting was foreseen in the Annex 1 or not. In case it was not, you will need to insert a short explanation, as well as complete the section called Unforeseen Subcontracting in the periodic report Part B. You can have more information on that specific case on slide 52. Purchase costs. So we have three types of purchase cost: travel, equipment, and cost for other goods, works, and services. In the financial statement, you can insert the actual cost that you have had for each of those cost categories. Also, by clicking on the icon on the right, it will open the use of resource form in which you will be able to explain part of those purchase costs. Automatically, the tool will calculate the part of purchase cost that exceeds 15% of the personnel cost. And that part that exceeds 15% of the personnel cost will need to be explained, and starting with the most expensive cost items down to the 15% threshold. So for instance, if you have declared 120K personal costs, 25K purchase cost, automatically the tool will request you to explain the amount of 7K. What do you need to provide as explanation? Well, you need to specify the actual cost, the cost item name, the work package, and also if it is foreseen in the Annex 1 of the grant agreement. And in case it is not foreseen, you will be requested to provide an explanation. Internally invoiced goods and services. As a reminder, this concerns goods or services that are provided or produced within the organization of the beneficiary that are internally invoiced and that need to be used directly for the action. These costs must be declared as unit cost according to the entity's usual cost accounting practices, and both the unit and the methodology to determine the cost per unit should be documented. In the financial statement, you need to click on the icon on the right to open up the use of resource form in which you will need to specify the unit cost, the item name, the work package, and if it is foreseen in the Annex 1. In case it is not, you will need to provide an explanation. The requested EU contribution is also one element that you need to specify in your financial statement. It can be either a positive amount for the beneficiaries and affiliated entities who are planning to receive EU funding as per the estimated budget, or it can also be zero for the others. Be careful because the requested EU contribution is automatically set to 100% of the total cost, so it's important to change it if needed. Then, when this is done, you need to click on Validate. The last step for your financial part is to electronically sign the financial part and submit it to the coordinator to include it in the periodic report. By signing the financial part directly in the portal, the beneficiaries confirm that the information provided is complete, reliable and true, that the costs declared are eligible, that the cost and the contributions can be substantiated by adequate records and supporting documents. The financial statement in case of affiliated entities and associated partners. So affiliated entities that do not have access to the reporting modules. So it's actually the main beneficiary to which the affiliated entity is linked who will fill in the financial statement of the affiliated entity in the system based on the information it received from the affiliated entities. Then the main beneficiary will electronically sign it and submit it to the coordinator. It's the affiliated entity who must ensure the accuracy of the encoded information, but it's the main beneficiary who is ultimately responsible for submitting the financial statement of the affiliated entity. For audit purposes, the affiliated entity must keep appropriate and sufficient evidence to prove the eligibility of all the costs declared. For associated partners, it depends on the case. Associated partner case A, they do not have any cost reporting. Associated partners case B, they do have a cost reporting, but they have no access to the reporting modules, and they also have no individual financial statement in the system. Actually, their costs are included in the financial statement of the designated beneficiary. The designated beneficiary is the main beneficiary to which the associated partner is legally or financially linked. So in the end, there will be one financial statement for both the designated beneficiary and its associated partner. In case there are several associated partners linked to one designated beneficiary, in the financial statement, there will be all the costs of all entities. For audit purposes, the designated beneficiary needs to be able to demonstrate the split of the reported cost per entity and per period, and the associated partner must keep appropriate and sufficient evidence to prove the eligibility of all the costs declared. We invite you to have a look at the guidance document that IHI prepared to explain the differences between affiliated entities and associated partners, case A and case B. In-kind contribution. So you may have noticed that there is no specific field in the financial statement to specify the reported ICOP, non-EU ICOP, and financial contributions paid by private members and contributing partners. It's because the financial statement follows the standard template for all EC grants and therefore does not capture those specific budget items. ICOP, non-EU ICOP, and financial contributions therefore needs to be reported in the continuous reporting, in the GU contribution tab. It's important that all private members and contributing partners encode their total contributions since the beginning of the project in those fields. It's one row per entity, meaning also one row for each associated partner case B. Pay attention that it must be the cumulative amount and not the amount per project period. This means, for instance, that in period 2, you will need to insert the total contribution for period 1 and period 2. Make sure the value that you encode in the Geo Contribution tab are consistent with the values that have been encoded in the financial statements and in the Part B of the technical part. This Geo Contribution tab needs to be completed before the periodic report is logged for review by the coordinator. You will notice that there is no IKA field. It's because IKA is reported separately. Certification. In final period, a certification needs to be provided in some cases. A CFS certificate on financial statements needs to be provided in case the requested EU funding plus financial contributions received is equal or higher than 430k. A CCS certificate on the statements of contributions needs to be provided by private members or contributing partners in case their total financial and in-kind contributions is equal or higher than 430k and the requested funding is equal to 0. The threshold is calculated individually for each entity and per project. If the threshold is reached, one single certification needs to be provided to cover all the costs and contributions, if any. Here is a list of the most common errors detected during audit based on the experience of IMI 2 and IHI first projects. For instance, cost incurred by another entity that was not identified in the grant agreement, or costs that were not recorded in the accounts of the beneficiary. Also, non-eligible bonuses that were declared, or incorrect calculation of personnel costs, or estimated costs instead of actual costs, invalid or missing timesheets or supporting documents, inconsistency with HR records, declaration of deductible VAT. For subcontracting costs, no valid supporting documents, or no proof of best value for money or lowest price if it's appropriate. For equipment, full price charged instead of the depreciation cost, wrong depreciation calculation. For travel cost, no valid supporting documents, or cost that was not related to the action, or travel that was not occurring during the period.
Moving on to the continuous reporting and the technical report, Part A. The continuous reporting module opens at project start date. All beneficiaries have access to it. It has to be updated by the consortium before each periodic report is logged for review by the coordinator. At periodic report submission, the tool freezes the data and automatically feeds Part A of the periodic report. At periodic report submission, we expect that the information provided in the continuous reporting is up to date and consistent with the information of Part B of the periodic report. There are several tabs to be filled in, starting with the project summary. The text included in this section should cover the context and overall objectives, as well as the work performed and main achievements by the end of each period, so it's important to update it with the latest available information. The text will become publicly available and should therefore not contain confidential information. It should be written in such a way that is understood by lay audiences, and the focus should be on results. Links to publications and so on are encouraged to support the results. Moving to the Deliverables tab. It is important that each beneficiary is aware which deliverable they are responsible for or which deliverables they are expected to contribute to as indicated in the description of action. Please remember that all deliverables flagged with a dissemination level public will be published in a repository. If, for any reason, a deliverable is delayed, a comment should be included in the comment box that includes a justification for the delay and a new delivery date. The deliverables of each project mostly fall into the below categories: the progress and project deliverables, the data management plans, the dissemination and communication plans, the IHI outputs deliverables, for which you will hear more later, and the clinical study deliverables when applicable. Moving to milestones. Milestones indicated in this tab are taken directly from the description of action. When a milestone is reached, mark it as achieved together with the delivery date. In case of delays, please include a comment with a justification and a new delivery date. Critical risks are already identified in the description of action. At the end of each period, beneficiaries should give the state of play of every risk identified in the DOA and, if necessary, provide new mitigation measures. Unforeseen risks can be added. There is also a tab to include all project-related publications. Some important aspects to consider when it comes to publications as part of your obligations from the grant agreement are as follows. Peer-reviewed project publications must be open access and available in a repository with a link to be provided. This repository should be different to the publisher. These publications must appropriately acknowledge IHI funding, including the founding members and any contributing partners, and must include a disclaimer. Please add here only publications related to the project and not simply publications published by consortium members, if not linked to the project. There are more tabs to be filled in, including results, as indicated here. These tabs have some instructions on how to be filled in, while additional guidance will also become available shortly. These tabs also include aspects related to impact, datasets, and dissemination and communication activities. Part of the continuous reporting is also to fill in the JU contributions. This was already explained in one of the previous slides, so we will not spend time repeating it now. Periodic reporting, technical report, Part B. Part B is a narrative description of the work and has the format of a document. This exercise is usually coordinated either by the coordinator of the project or a designated project manager in the project who collects all the input. It is expected that all beneficiaries contribute to the Part B. Once Part B is finalized, the coordinator uploads it as a PDF document as part of the whole periodic report submission. The template of Part B is available in the link indicated in this slide and on the IHI website. Please make sure to use this template and not the general Horizon Europe one, as it has been tailored to the IHI specific needs. The technical report Part B includes several elements as listed below. Explanation on the work carried out and progress per work package. In this section, we want to understand the progress of each work package, including deviations, and capture the most important results. We therefore ask the consortium to briefly explain the main work, focusing on key activities and results, and refer to relevant milestones, deliverables, and publications. The consortium is also asked to describe the main activities performed by each participant. It is particularly important for us to be able to validate the personnel costs and effort of each beneficiary. If, for example, a participant reports personnel costs and effort under Work Package 1 in their financial statement, we would expect to see a description of their activities under this section of the report, aligned with the reported costs.
Financial contributions. The three first columns of this table must be filled in by the entities who are paying the financial contribution, while the three last columns of this table must be filled in by the entities who are receiving the financial contribution. The financial contributions that can be paid by IHI private members or contributing partners, and the entities who can receive financial contributions must be eligible for receiving IHI funding. There is a distinction between the financial contribution paid and the financial contribution used. The total financial contribution paid, a capital letter, must equal to the sum of the financial contribution used in the past, current, and future periods. The total financial contribution paid must be the cumulative amount, not the amount for the reporting period, and it must be consistent with the financial contribution paid reported in the continuous reporting in the GU contribution tab. You also need to specify the financial contribution paid by affiliated entities and associated partners case B, so there must be a separate row for each legal entity. What to do in case the financial contribution is not foreseen? If the financial contribution is to cover costs of activities not already planned in the DOA, it should not be reported and it will require an amendment. While if the financial contribution is to cover costs of activities that are already foreseen in the DOA, then it can be reported in this table and you will need to provide a justification in the deviation part. Non-EU ICOP. Non-EU ICOP are eligible costs not reimbursed by IHI, incurred by IHI private members and contributing partners for activities carried out outside the EU and Horizon Europe associated countries. In this table, you are requested to insert the non-EU ICOP incurred for the current period, as well as the total since the start of the project. Ensure the cumulative amount is consistent with the non-EU ICOP reported in the GU contribution tab in the continuous reporting. What to do in case you have some non-EU ICOP that was not foreseen? Well, in case the activities were not already planned in the DOA, it should not be reported in this table, as it will require an amendment. But in case the activities were already foreseen in the description of the action, the DOA, for instance, if they were, for instance, expected to be EU ICOP instead of non-EU ICOP, in this case, it can be reported in this table, but you will be requested to provide a justification in the deviation part. For some calls, the non-EU ICOP is limited to a certain threshold. For instance, for IHI call 5, the non-EU ICOP is limited to 30% of the total ICOP. private members and contributing partners, they can report more non-EU ICOP than initially foreseen in the estimated budget. All reported eligible ICOP will be acknowledged for the program execution. However, the non-EU ICOP reported beyond the limits set in the call conditions will not count for the calculation of the 45% contribution for the concerned project. The 45% contribution threshold needs to be maintained during the whole project implementation, and this will be verified by IHI office and in particular towards the end of the project, because at the end of the project the 45% threshold must be met. Let's check an example. So if in the call conditions the non-EU ICOP is limited to 20%, and in the estimated budget you have 100K ICOP, including 20K non-EU ICOP and 80K EU ICOP. By the final reporting, in case 120K of total ICOP are reported and include 40K non-EU ICOP and 80K EU ICOP, as you can see, the non-EU ICOP is higher than the 20% foreseen. It represents actually 33% of the total reported ICOP. So while the 120K ICOP will be acknowledged and accepted for the overall program execution, only 104K of ICOP will count for the calculation of the 45% matching for the particular project. And why only 104K of ICOP? Because it will include the 80K of EU ICOP, but also only 24K non-EU ICOP, because the 24K non-EU ICOP will represent 20% of the 120K total reported ICOP.
Another section of Part B is the explanation on deviations in use of resources. By beneficiary, you are expected to provide explanation on deviations regarding the budget use and the effort in the period. We ask you to explain any significant deviations compared to the initial work plan, both in terms of budget and of effort. Let us give you an example. It is year one of the project, but it is clear from the description of action that your main work will be in year 5. You do not need to justify the low resources used in year 1. This is not considered a deviation. Another example. It is year 1 of the project and you required a lot more effort into the preparatory work than anticipated. This can be considered a deviation as it will affect your overall contribution. Will you be able to finalize your tasks with the remainder of the budget regardless of this overspending? This should be explained. Please also remember what we said about deviations related to financial contributions and non-EU ICOP, as some cases highlighted before required an amendment and should not be reported here. There is a section in the report where you can include unforeseen subcontracting that occurred in the period. IHI may exceptionally approve costs related to subcontracts not included in the description of action without formally amending the grant agreement if the circumstances are explained and justified in this section. This should not be common practice, and an amendment should be prioritized if unforeseen subcontracting occurs. Periodic reporting, the steps. To summarize, all beneficiaries will receive a notification of the start of the periodic report. All beneficiaries are expected to contribute to the technical part of the periodic report, ensure that the continuous reporting is up to date, complete their own financial statements, and e-sign and submit their financial part to the coordinator. The coordinator will then approve and submit the elements of the periodic report. After the submission, IHI will review the submitted periodic report and accept or reject it. IHI initiates the payment to the coordinator for the period afterwards.
Chapter 3: Some practical examples. Example for entities that are not IHI private members and not contributing partners, and who are requesting EU contribution. In period 1, an entity is incurring 100K as cost, of which they plan to request 70K as reimbursement from IHI and 30K will be funded with financial contribution received. In period 1, they need to specify in the financial statement 100K as total eligible costs and 70K as requested EU contribution. In the continuous reporting, they don't need to mention anything because they're not IHI private members and not contributing partners. In the technical report part B, they need to specify the financial contribution used in the financial contribution table. Example of an IHI private member or contributing partner contributing ICOP and financial contribution and requesting zero EU funding. Let's assume that in period 1 the entity is incurring 100K of ICOP and paying 50K of financial contribution. In period 1, in the financial statement, the entity will need to declare 100K of eligible costs and request zero EU funding. In the continuous reporting, in the GU contribution tab, the entity will need to specify 100K of ICOP and 50K of financial contribution given. And in the technical report part B, the entity will need to complete the table on financial contributions. Let's assume that in period 2, the entity will then incur 60K of ICOP and will pay 10K of financial contribution to another project beneficiary. In the financial statement of period 2, the entity will then declare the eligible cost amount of 60K and request zero EU funding. In the continuous reporting, the entity will need to report this time 160K ICOP and 60K financial contribution given, since those are the cumulative amount for period 1 plus period 2. And in the technical report part B, the entity will need to complete the table on financial contributions. Here is an example for hybrid participants. Hybrid participants are IHI private members or contributing partners who are contributing ICOP and or financial contribution and also requesting EU funding. So let's assume that in period 1, such entity is incurring 200K as eligible cost and also requesting 50K of EU contribution. This means that the ICOP is equal to 150K. So in period 1, in the financial statement of that entity, the entity will need to declare 200K as eligible cost and will need to insert 50K as requested EU contribution. And in the continuous reporting, in the GEO contribution tab, the entity will need to insert 150K as ICOP. Let's assume that in period 2 now, the entity will incur 75K as eligible cost and will request 25 requested EU contribution. This means that the ICOP will be equal to 50K. So in the financial statement in period 2, the entity will need to declare 75K as eligible cost and request 25K as EU contribution. And in the continuous reporting, the entity will need to insert 200K as ICOP because it is the cumulative amount, it is the total between 50K for period 2 and 150K for period 1. Example for associated partners case B. Remember, associated partners have no access to the reporting module and have no individual financial statement in the system. It's the designated beneficiary who is in charge of the reporting for the associated partner. So let's assume that in period 1, the associated partner contributes 30K of ICOP and the designated beneficiary contributes 70K of ICOP. In the financial statement of the designated beneficiary, all eligible costs need to be declared. So the designated beneficiary will declare 100K of eligible costs because it includes the cost of both the designated beneficiary and the associated partners. The requested EU funding will be equal to 0. In the continuous reporting, in the GEO contribution tab, the designated beneficiary will insert 30K of ICOP for the associated partner and 70K of ICOP for the designated beneficiary. So here there are two different rows and it's not together.
After the submission of the periodic report, After the submission of the periodic report, the IHI staff reviews the submitted report and either accepts it, requests additional information and therefore stops the clock, or rejects it. The payment letter upon acceptance is generated, and then once the coordinator agrees, the payment is made to the coordinator.
Regarding the reporting of in-kind contribution to additional activities, so what we call IKAA, it is done separately. And so you may have noticed that we haven't discussed about IK reporting yet, and it's because it's not included in the periodic report. The IKA reporting, whether it is for project level additional activities or program level additional activities, it is reported via the funding and tenders portal as well, but in a separate reporting module. It has also a different reporting deadline because the IK reporting is due by the end of May each year, so it's an annual reporting and it's therefore not linked to the project period. Also, the IK reporting is done directly to IHI, so it doesn't go through the project coordinator, and it has also no minimum threshold for the IK certification, which is different than for ICOP. If you want to learn more about IKA and IK reporting, we invite you to have a look at the IKAA guidelines that are available on IHI website.
Chapter 4: IHI Project Outputs. Let's have a look at the Project Output Report. The Project Output Report consists of an online questionnaire which is designed to track IHI specific key performance indicators that could not be monitored otherwise. This questionnaire captures the progress and the achievements of IHI projects versus IHI specific key performance indicators. Why we use this report to monitor IHI specific key performance indicators? Because these aspects are not captured in the continuous reporting, so we had to design a specific IT tool, an IT platform, and a process to monitor these aspects. Something to remember is that the project output reports, it's a yearly deliverable, so it's due each 12 months plus at the end of a project. For example, if your project lasts 4.5 years, you are going to have 5 project output reports to deliver. One per each year, plus the last one, which will cover the last 6 months of the project. In this slide, you see outlined the content of the project output reports. As you see, there are several areas of interest that are covered in the online questionnaire. Of course, not all projects will deliver results in all of these areas, and this is perfectly fine. Projects are different in scope and nature. So be truthful in reporting the reality, the actual achievements of your projects without feeling pressure to fulfill all the performance areas that you see in the questionnaire. We are looking for quality results, we are not looking for quantity. It is a questionnaire that combines both quantitative data and qualitative data. So examples are key to bring data alive. Let's have a look at the process and tools for monitoring IHI project outputs. The project coordinator receives an automatic email invitation to connect to SOFIA platform. Attached to this email there will be the questionnaire template, the glossary, the instructions, and the Q&A document. They will receive this 30 days before the due date of the deliverable as a pre-reminder, and also at the due date of the deliverable if this has not been submitted yet. Once completed, SOFIA generates a PDF that is sent via email to the project coordinator and also to all actors involved. At this point, the coordinator has the duty to upload the generated PDF to the project output deliverable in the grant management tool like any other deliverable. An IHI office has the duty to assess the deliverable uploaded by the project coordinator. In this slide, you see the coordinator view of SOFIA platform. As a coordinator, when you log in Sophia account, you will have to go in My Workspace and specifically in a menu called Overview of Project Outputs IHI. You will see this information in the left side of the screen in the red circles. In the landing page, you have a set of information. You will have the list of the projects that you manage with IHI, with a status and several actions. When the project output report is in preparation, the status will turn in yellow. When it's submitted to IHI, it will turn green. And when it's not processed, so at the beginning, it's red, which is normal. For pending projects, so the projects that are not yet processed, the coordinator has two possibilities. Edit the report to start the reporting himself or herself by clicking the Edit button that you see in green on the right side of the screen. The other possibility is to invite a project manager or someone else to delegate the reporting action by clicking the Invite button in blue that you see in the right side of the screen. Or simply view the report. You can simply view it. Another important element is the fact that instructions on how to report are present in this Sophia page where you will connect. So if you look at the beginning of the page, you will see 3 orange buttons. There you can download the template of the questionnaire, you can download the glossary, you can also download the user guide and the Q&A document. And these pieces of information will help you understand in details how to perform the reporting. They will help you understand the language that is used. They will also support your questions with specific answers you might encounter during the reporting. So not only these instructions are attached to the automatic email invitation that the coordinator will receive, but also are present in Sophia environment when you log into your account. The results of the project output reports in aggregate will be used to record the achievements and innovations that will be developed by IHI projects in total, and will nurture the future annual activity reports and other type of reports and statistics that will be requested to IHI office. For example, the biannual monitoring report, which is a performance report across all public-private partnerships, midterm and final evaluations of the program, auditing activities, industry statistic, European Commission statistics. So in essence, the project output reports is a fantastic opportunity to promote in a crisp and clear way the key innovations that your projects were able to bring to life. And the project results will shape present and future strategy to boost healthcare research and innovation in Europe.